I'm the Information and Planning Officer here at the California Board of Accountancy. So that means my team and I do all the communications, websites, social media, videos, fun outreach events like this. So that's what we're responsible for. Welcome to this special virtual edition of the CBA Campus Tour Irvine Valley College edition. We're excited to be here with you today to share some important information about requirements. Becoming a CPA is going to be changing soon. And this kind of thing doesn't happen very often. So that's why we want to make sure you're up to speed and aware of how these changes may affect you so you can feel confident on your road ahead. So that's why we all got on our band t-shirts, because we said, hey, let's make this, we want to get out to as many colleges and universities around the state as possible. Let's make it like a road show. How about a tour? So we came up with this fun idea of a campus tour. We just don't have any merch to sell, or we're not actually on a tour bus. But besides that, the illusion is there. So we're having a little fun with our campus tour. This is actually the very last one. We've been going strong for about 9 months, starting last September. And we've hit over 30 different colleges and universities around the state, some virtual, like we're doing today here with you, some in person as well. So it's been a very, very busy academic year for our team, but it's been very, very fun. All right, so I'm going to do some introductions first, but before that, I want to kick it back over. Did you want to say something again, Professor Tchaikovsky?
Hey, first off, thank you, everybody, for being here today. Absolutely stoked to be doing this meeting with the California Board of Accountancy. We were going to be doing it a little bit earlier, but there was a snafu on my end with some unexpected traveling plans, all as well, though. But again, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. And I think what we should do is have everybody from the CBA introduce themselves, and then we'll talk about the new educational requirements. And then once that's kind of happened, then if you want to unmute yourselves and ask questions, this is by far the best place to do it. One thing I will kind of mention, though, and this is the California State Bar coming out of me, right? Whatever you hear today are just basically our opinions when it comes to licensure, evaluating units, whatever you may have. The California Board of Accountancy has the final say on whether or not a certain class meets that requirement. Obviously, we're not here to mislead you, but I just want to kind of put that disclaimer out there. So thank you guys so much.
And interesting you say that, because we have a couple of individuals joining us today that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. So let me introduce you to the manager of our exams unit, although I know the names of the units are changing, but for now, I'll just still call you the manager of the exams unit. So Patty Ritter is here today. Hello, Patty. Thank you for joining us. She will have lots of wonderful answers to any questions you have about examinations or anything like that a little later. And then also like to introduce you to Hillary Barbosa. Hello, Hillary. She's kind of on the licensure application side. And again, she's been doing this every day for many, many years, actually going through the applications. So she will be more than happy to answer any questions you have coming up in just a little bit. So Mick Murray is also here with us, kind of behind the scenes, making sure everything is running smoothly. And we are honored to be joined by the president of the California Board of Accountancy, rocking her AC/DC t-shirt, President Christian Latta, CPA. So I'll kick it over to you in just a second, Ms. Latta, but I have a couple of questions that I kind of want to throw out there to kind of set a base. So I'm rocking In Excess. I don't know if any of you have heard of In Excess. They're kind of one of my favorite bands from the 80s and 90s. Yes, I was alive in the 80s and 90s, but I enjoyed the music back then. So that's what we're going to do. So one of the exciting things when we speak to community colleges is that there is such a bigger variety of where you are on your educational journey, I would say, at community colleges compared to when we speak to university students. So I want to just ask a quick question right now, and then maybe you could just fire off an emoji for which one applies to you, so we can just get a little bit of an idea of who we're talking to. So first of all, I want to know, when did you graduate from high school? All right, so first, when did you graduate from high school? So are you a recent high school grad? So just like in the last couple years, maybe 2024 or on, any recent high school grads? Fire off some emojis at me if we have any of those. And I'm not seeing any right now, so maybe not. What about, let's say, 2017 through now? So let's say the last 10 years. All right, so we got a few more. All right, bunch more coming in. So say in the last 10 years. Okay, good. So that looks like a good number of you there. What about more than the last 10 years ago? So let's say 2016 or beyond. So beyond 2016. So we've got a few of those as well for sure. Hey, that's not that long ago. There you go. Okay, so I would say maybe two-thirds in the last 10 years, one-third beyond 10 years. Okay, one more question for you then. Because like I said, you could be in a lot of different reasons for why you're attending community college right now. So are you a recent high school graduate and planning on transferring to a four-year university? So thumbs up, hand wave at me if you are a recent grad and planning on transferring to a four-year. Okay, so I've got not too many, only just a couple, it looks like. Okay, so just a few of you there. What about, are you a recent college graduate and you're returning just to get units to get to the 150? Are you returning to get to 150? So that's kind of the current licensure requirements. So you're a graduate and you're going back to get your 150. Okay, I see several of you in that boat. What about a recent college grad, but you're looking to take accounting units, maybe specifically now to get your CPA? So recent college grad, but you're here more for the accounting units as you're working your way to CPA. Okay, got a few of those too. And then I guess the last, okay, good amount there. Then the last, and this is always a really interesting group, and there's always plenty of you usually. So maybe those of you that are already in the workforce that have been working for a while, and maybe you're even contemplating career change, and you're coming back to community college now after a longer break from school, and you're taking some accounting units and maybe working your way to be a CPA. Anyone like that on the call? Yeah, okay. Yeah, we've got a few of those as well. Okay. Yeah, that's like I said, we find it very interesting that, you know, the value of community colleges, that they're able to, you know, provide things for a good variety of students in your different backgrounds and everything. So that's really, really good. All right. So thank you for answering those questions for us. It kind of gives us a good idea of who we're talking to. So at this point, I would like to officially hand it over to our president, Christian Latta, CPA. She's going to tell you a little bit about who we are, who is the CPA, why are we here, why should you care about us? And then she's going to speak about just how valuable she feels that CPA license is for her and her career. And she has a very fascinating career up to this point, I would say as well. So President Latta, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Hemphill. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your Friday afternoon for this presentation. I know we're kind of all brain foggy and ready for the weekend, so thank you guys for coming. So I will talk to you first about the role of the CBA. So what the California Board of Accountancy is we are a state agency that regulates public accountancy in California, and we issue the CPA licenses to not only individuals, but accounting firms as well. And we actually manage 116,000 licensees, which is the largest population of CPAs in the entire country. So that's one unique fact about our board, and that includes individuals and firms as well. And the purpose of us doing this is mainly to protect consumers, and that includes individuals and businesses who need services from CPAs. So we want to make sure that they're getting quality services from CPAs that meet the professional standards, so that they can trust all the CPAs that they work with. So we make sure that if there are any issues, we address those as well. So that's our mission and the backbone of what we do here. Our board is comprised of 15 members of both licensed and non-licensed individuals. So about half of our board are actually members of the public, and about half of us are licensed CPAs, which is also a unique aspect of our board. Not all state boards have public members. So that's an important thing for us to have that consumer perspective be a voice on our board as well. So in addition, we have about 100 staff members, some of which are here today to just answer any questions you have regarding licensing or your transcripts and the new process. And really, we're here to support you in your journey to become a CPA. This is probably the first you're hearing about the CBA when you're thinking about getting your license. And so, not only do we issue the licenses, but we also have an enforcement side of our unit as well to make sure that CPAs are following the laws in the state. And yeah, we also have our examination unit, which is the one you'll see first, which is where you apply for your CPA license after you meet all the requirements and pass the exam. Then you would come in contact with our licensing unit to meet the requirements to apply for licensure. And then once you're licensed, the next part of our unit is that enforcement aspect that I mentioned, which is their role is to make sure that the licensees are complying with all the laws in the state. So that's kind of a top level overview of what we do at the CBA and kind of how that would apply to you while you're interested in becoming a CPA. So I will now move on to the value of a CPA license. So here you see on the slides, there's these different attributes that we consider as the values of a CPA license. So I'm going to go through these different values by just kind of telling you my career story and background in accounting, just to give you a different perspective of the different opportunities you might have as a CPA outside of tax and audit. So here you see there's prestige and respect, career development opportunities, a variety of industries you can be a part of, job security, job satisfaction, and then of course money and benefits, which are all very important to choosing a career. So first, I'll just start at the beginning of my career. I started my career in public accounting as an auditor at a small local firm in Orange County. And I did that for about 4 years, and I had passed my CPA exam at that time and was promoted to senior. I always knew I didn't want to stay in public accounting, but I always knew it was the best place to start my accounting career. So that's what I did. And then once I was promoted to senior and I passed the exam, I actually moved into private industry. Typically, most people wait until they're fully licensed. I had met all the requirements except for the open book ethics exam. That was a requirement at that time. And while I was doing my interview process, they felt that I had met the most rigorous requirements of getting my license, so they still gave me the job even though I hadn't been licensed yet. So that just shows like how valuable and important passing that exam is, how respected it is that even though I hadn't fully finished, they kind of saw me as, okay, she's going to be a CPA. She just has this one last requirement. So that just speaks to kind of the weight of that exam and how valued it is in the market. So I actually went into fashion. I wanted to work at a fashion company. I worked at Guess. So I went straight from public accounting to a public company. And I switched to SEC financial reporting, which is financial reporting just for public companies. There are very specific requirements for reporting there. I did that, and I did enjoy being in a more casual environment where I felt I could express myself more. But then I realized I wanted to actually get more into the fashion industry. So I used my CPA license to transition over to a different department called merchandise planning, which is kind of the finance side of the fashion business. And you kind of get more into forecasting, inventory, and sales for the specific units of clothing. So also because I had gotten my CPA license and I transitioned over into this job that I had no experience in. I didn't meet the prerequisites to do that job. I was supposed to have a fashion degree, supposed to have done 2 years of experience in another role. And I got to bypass all of that and go straight into this role just because I was a CPA, and the VP thought that because I was a CPA, I would be able to catch on and do well at that role. So that's another example about how your license can be transitional and can get you into other avenues as well if you find yourself wanting to make a change. Now, during that time, since I was new in that role, that's when the pandemic happened and I was laid off. But all of my peers who were in their primary accounting roles, none of them lost their jobs. So that's an example of how accounting can be a recession-proof career. Actually, accountants were considered essential workers at that time, and that's because no matter what's going on in the world, the IRS still wants their money, and so do the bank. The banks still want their audits done. So accountants were considered essential workers. Not only that, but because this was a new regulatory environment with the pandemic and the different credits that came out and the stimulus payments, accountants were actually looked at as guides, especially CPAs, in like what to do next, especially for business owners. They're leaning on their CPAs on like how to get through this tough situation, how they can best navigate the uncertainty. So accountants and CPAs were looked at as guides at that time and also essential workers. So you have that job security regardless of the economic state. And that's something that's very valuable as a CPA. And one of the reasons why I decided to become an accountant and a CPA for that job security, because when I went into college in 2007, that was a recession at that time too. And I had seen my dad lose his job, and a lot of people just really be in a hard place financially. And I identified which careers kind of could stand through those types of times. So moving on, once I was laid off, I actually decided to start my own tax prep business for fashion and beauty brands. So this is another example of how being a CPA is so valuable that you kind of have the base and foundational knowledge to start your own business. So I started my own business at that time. And because I did that, I was given two really amazing opportunities. I was recruited by the board, the governor's secretary at the California Board of Accountancy. I thought it was spam. I got like a random email and I thought it was fake. I didn't think it was real, but I called them and she explained the process and I found out it was real. And she actually was looking for just a different member to put on the board that was already on the board. So I think she was looking for a Black woman at the time. She liked that I was younger. She liked that I didn't have a traditional background. They wanted an alternative perspective on the board outside of the traditional path. So I really thought I was out of my league. You know, most board members, they're partners. They're very far along in their career, maybe a decade, 2 decades ahead of me. So I really didn't think it was the right opportunity for me, but that has proven to not be true. And I've been really good at it and I have enjoyed it a lot. And my colleagues respect me regardless of my age, which is really wonderful. So I got a really great opportunity from putting myself out there and using my license to make my own business. Additionally, I was recruited by a startup founder by a beauty brand called Danger Jones, which is one of the pictures you see there. I'm in the bottom with the pink hair. And it was a hair company that makes all those bright colors. And he recruited me to be his head of finance. I had never had a role of that level. I had not really everything I did in that job, I'd never technically done before. But again, because I was a CPA, he thought I could figure it out. So again, speaks to like the respect that that license has. People view you as competent. They view you as sharp. They view you as someone who is able to be resourceful and figure things out and dependable as well. So that's just an example of how I leveraged my license to get this amazing board opportunity, as well as kind of jump from just being a solopreneur to like being a head of finance at this cool startup. So after that, I kind of got into accounting consulting, which is what I currently do now. And what that is after you have a certain amount of experience in your field, you can go be a consultant. So I'm an employee at a consulting firm now, and they will send me out to different projects depending on what the needs of that client are. For me, I specialize in creative industries, so my recruiter knows to call me anytime there's a creative company, entertainment, beauty, fashion, like I'm their first call because I've decided to niche down and specialize in that industry because I feel my most authentic self in that space. And so that's why I have all these cool opportunities, because at a certain point I put my foot down and decided I only want to work in creative spaces, and that has paid off for me. So I'm able to, oh, excuse me, getting a little tired. Um, so in my consulting career, I'm on my third project. My first project was at Aloe Yoga. My second project was at Snapchat, which is pictured on the screen. And then I'm currently at Insomniac events, which is they throw EDM music festivals. That would be like your EDCs or your other big festivals. So now I'm in a very blended finance and accounting role, which is something else your CPA license can lead you to. Depending on the company, there are opportunities to do both finance and accounting. So yeah, that's kind of my journey. And as I've mentioned, I've been able to acquire more job satisfaction by being my authentic self, deciding what I know is best for me and what's not. And even though you might have people say, oh, well, you're limiting your opportunities. Well, that's okay because you're limiting yourself from the opportunities that you know are not right for you. And that allows the opportunities that are right for you to come, to the front. So I also want to highlight, I think the important part of my career journey that I think is good to know for students is that there are many unconventional things you can do in accounting. There are many opportunities outside of tax and audit. It's totally great if you want to go that route, but just know that if you are a creative person or you are someone who wants that stability, but you don't necessarily want to do the traditional path, there are many, many opportunities, especially here in California. Since you live near LA, there's entertainment. If you enjoy basketball, you can go work for the NBA. If you enjoy baseball, you can go work for a Major League Baseball team or whatever industries you're interested in. Aerospace. I have a friend who works for a cannabis company. I have a friend who works for a cosmetics company. So you can find more job satisfaction by aligning your personal interests in trying to weave that into your career or working for a company where your values are aligned. Like I am a yogi, I do yoga, so I loved working for Alo Yoga. So you have to think about the work perks that you get. Like people think those are minimal things, but when they're tied to things that you genuinely enjoy in life, like I love going to music festivals and live events. So the work perks you get can really enrich your life and be very cool. So that's just my spiel. Just want to let you know there's lots of value your CPA license can provide. There are many opportunities outside the traditional ones if you've not heard of them yet. So I just wanted to kind of shine light on that, especially as we're trying to rebrand the accounting profession, spread awareness about different opportunities so that you guys just have some more insight as into like what your career could look like. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I love hearing all that, Ms. Latta. That's, so inspirational and absolutely true. That's what's so exciting about accounting. There's so many different job opportunities in such a big variety of fields. You mentioned Major League Baseball. I'm a huge baseball fan and probably not good enough to play on any team. Well, I'm too old now, but but if I was a CPA, I could try to get a job in one of those places. So I think that's such a good thing because a lot of, like you said, trying to even change the brand of what a CPA is. Because a lot of times you see accountants on TV or in movies, they're just the people doing the taxes and all of that, which is nothing wrong with that. That's an important part of the industry, but there's so many other opportunities in there. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. So that is awesome. Well, if you have any questions for her, she'll be around for a little bit too. Maybe we can pick her brain about the CPA exam since she's definitely taken it and passed it. But first, let's get into some of these requirements and kind of talk about why we're here and why these things are changing. That's probably a good question too. So it was a little over 3 years ago when this kind of all started in early 2023, the CBA, the board itself, the 15 members, directed staff to look into how we could potentially clarify and maybe even streamline some of the licensure requirements so students like you and others could have a better understanding of them. So we launched into something we called the SureCPA project, and that stood for Students Understanding the Requirements to be a CPA. For more than a year, the CBA engaged all sorts of interested parties. We had lots of town hall meetings and forums with faculty, students like you. We talked to accounting firms. We talked to other states and their state boards of accountancy to make sure we're all kind of on the same page with how we wanted to move forward. We really did collaborate. We listened and took all that information and came up with a legislative proposal, which the CBA approved back in September of 2024. But everything that we do is actually in state law. So the CBA can't just do its own thing. The legislature has pretty much mandated everything that we do, and it's all in state law. So in order to change the rules, we can't just say, oh, let's do it this way now. No, we actually have to change the state law. So that's what we did last year. So our legislative proposal was introduced into the California legislature as CBA-sponsored Assembly Bill 1175. So that happened early last year. Then in September, it finished its journey through the legislative process, was sent to the governor's desk to sign, which he did on October 3rd. So that was the culmination of a lot of hard work. And we believe the bill does achieve that original goal of simplifying the licensure requirements. And something else we're proud of is the increased flexibility that got added in that I'll talk about in a little bit to allow for a broader representation of candidates to jump on into that CBA pipeline. So once the bill passed, we've spent, like I said, the last 9 months or so on the road for the campus tour to spread the word and hopefully get you excited about how the requirements are changing. So let's talk about when all of this takes effect. So this timeline graphic gives you a rough idea of where we are in the process. So we've gone through 2025, the legislative, we actually gone through it. So we took that off the timeline. So now we're starting in 2026. So you see that green area, which is the implementation window. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're getting out, you see outreach to students. We're doing that. We're updating our CBA resources, all the applications and forms to make sure they're ready to go with the new requirements. There are some regulations that go along with the law, and I won't really go into the statutes and then the regulations, but the regulations are easier to change. So some of the ways we're going to implement the bill is through regulations, and those are actually going through the process right now and should be finalized later in this year. So you notice the brown line is the current rules. We're calling that the legacy pathway. So that's happening through 2026. You see it keeps on trucking through 27 and 2028, and then there's the stop sign. So the last day that you'll be able to apply with the current licensure rules is December 31st, 2028. So if you were kind of on your way already towards that, and that's the rules you know, and that's what you want to go with, you've still got 2.5 years to apply with that. But then that signpost right there, new licensure pathway takes effect January 1st, 2027. So that's when the new rules will officially go in. There's that green bar, the new licensure pathway starts there, and then just that arrow just will go on and on. So we're about 6.5 months away from the new rules kicking in. Got it? So the interesting thing is those 2 years, 2027 and 2028, the CBA will accept either pathway. You can go in and apply under the current rules, or if you choose, you can apply with the new rules. And that's really one of the main reasons why we're out here, is to make sure you understand both sets of rules and make sure you understand that you have a choice. If you are going to apply for your license in either 2027 or 2028, the choice is yours on which set of rules to apply with. All right. So,
David, sorry to interrupt you. Can I just ask a clarifying question? So this is obviously for me, this is so amazingly helpful, and thank you again for doing this. When it comes when we talk about like there's applying to sit for the exam, which is you're within 6 months of graduating and you've got 24 accounting units, 24 business units, and you'll have those done within 6 months. When we're talking about that the current licensing pathway of the 150 will be expiring, is that referring to once we've passed the CPA exam, once we've done the 150, once we've met basically education requirements, we paid the fees, and we have the work, that 1 year of work experience? So when we're talking about applying, that's applying for the license. That's not applying to sit for the exam, correct?
that is correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
150 is just with the license. And I'm going to pretty much explain what you just kind of asked. So let's kind of go through it and see if you still kind of have that question after. But yeah, it's kind of two separate things: applying for your approval to sit for the exam and then applying for the license. So you will apply twice with the CBA, first to sit for the exam, and then after you pass that and meet all the other requirements, then you apply again to sit for your license. So let's talk about what those requirements are to apply for your license. So here's a fun new graphic that we made that details all the new requirements. And so we break them up. We call it the 3 E's because they all start with E. So it's easy to remember. So you've got education, you've got examination, and you've got experience. So those are our 3 E's. Then there's another quadrant down there that's going to talk about the flexibility, which we'll get to in just a second. So the first E, education, is where you're going to see the bulk of the changes with the new licensure requirements. The way the educational requirements currently are, and this is kind of what you just alluded to, they're split up between the requirements you need to be approved to sit for the CPA exam. And then there are more educational requirements that will need to be met to get your license. Remember, that's under the current rules. So let's start with those requirements to be approved to sit for the CPA exam. Because of course, passing the CPA exam is one of the E's right there. That's the exam, examination. You still have to pass the CPA exam. Nothing is changing there with our new rules. So passage of the CPA exam is of course required to get your license. But there are some educational requirements to be approved to sit for the exam. Not just anyone can sit for the exam. You have to meet these three things right here. So number one is a conferral of a bachelor's degree or higher. And that can be in any, it doesn't have to be an accounting degree. It can be any bachelor's degree or higher. Second bullet, completion of 24 semester units of accounting subjects. Third bullet, completion of 24 semester units of business related subjects. So in order to be approved to sit for the exam, got to have that degree and then the 24 units of accounting, 24 units of business related subjects. So those are what you need. Send in your transcripts. We'll see that. And then we will approve you to sit for the CPA exam. You see the asterisk down there. And this is what Professor Tchaikovsky was alluding to with the 6 months, maybe completed within 180 days of exam application. So let's jump into that because that's something that's great called early entry. So now you don't have to have all of those 3 bullets completed yet. As long as you're within 180 days of having those completed, which we generally, it's kind of loosely way of saying, all right, you're in your final semester, right? Or you're just a couple of classes away from graduating or completing the 24-24. So if you're within 180 days of completing those requirements, then you can apply to sit for the exam under the early entry option. So there's a lot of information on our website. If you click on the applicants tab, you'll see a link to early entry. So in order to do this, you'll send us your transcripts just like any other exam applicant. But there's one other form that you'll need to send us, which is called a certificate of enrollment form. You can find that on the website under that link. And essentially, that's going to be your school's way of ensuring to us that you are enrolled in whatever classes you need, or that, yes, you will be graduating within the 180 days. So that way we know for sure that you will be meeting those requirements. So send all that to us. We'll approve you for early entry, and you're ready to start taking the CPA exam and getting ahead of the game. So you could actually, while you're still in that last semester of school, you could be taking your first section if you like, or at least starting, maybe getting prepared for studying and all of that. Okay, there is one other number that you see on this slide. I don't want this to confuse. Some people do get a little confused by this. You can ask me follow-up questions if you need to, but I just want you to be aware that there's also a 240 days there. So let's picture if you applied on January 1st for your to sit for the CPA exam because you were within 180 days of graduation. So let's say you graduated this spring, congratulations. You applied on January 1st, which was within 180 days. You have 240 days from January 1st, the day you submitted your application. So that's about 8 months. So that would be to the end of, I guess that would be August 1st, right? Or September 1st. To prove to us, to send us your final transcripts that you did indeed meet those requirements. Your university already said, yes, they're going to. That's how you got approved. But in order for us to give you that final stamp of approval, within 240 days of your application, you have to send us the final transcript with your degree conferred in all the courses. Okay, so that's the 240. We can get into that more if you're confused on that, but just want to make sure you are aware. If there's any of you on the call watching who have taken education outside of the United States, you will need to have that education evaluated by a CBA approved credential evaluation service. And we have a list of those approved on our website. And one last point, no changes to the early entry rules when the new requirements kick in. So everything about early entry will stay the same, whether it's 2026 or 2027 and beyond. All right, so let me finish off the exam requirements and then I'll open it up to some more questions. So what I just told you, the bachelor's 24-24 was if you are going to apply for your CPA exam this year in 2026. Now, if you're going to apply to sit for the CPA exam in 2027 or beyond, these will be your requirements. And they look pretty similar, right? I've got your conferral bachelor's degree. That's the same. Got the 24 semester units of accounting subjects. That looks the same to me. 24 semester units business related subjects. So up to that point, no change. You just have one more bullet there at the bottom. So now, starting in 2027, you will also be required to have completed 3 semester units of ethics within, in order to be approved to sit for that. All right. And those 3 semester units of ethics need to be in accounting ethics, audit, or fraud. Okay, so there we go. Those are that. Again, the 180 days of within application, early entry, like I said, no change to any of those rules. I'll throw it out real quick to kind of pause for questions. If there's any questions about just the requirements to get approved to sit for the CPA exam. So if you want to raise your hand, then I suppose we could unmute you, or maybe you can unmute yourself. I'm not sure. But any questions up to this point about those requirements for the CPA exam?
I was going to ask with regard to the 240 units, or excuse me, 240 days to submit your proof that you passed the classes for early entry.
Yeah.
What are we expected to get back? Because I submitted mine, and it still shows the same. I think it's C is the early entry type.
The option.
I'm just a little confused because is there some sort of like clarification on, hey, we recognize you've passed or you've submitted this and now you're good to go?
Patty Ritter would love to jump in and answer that question.
Yes, so your account will still show as an option C even after you submitted all your final documents. You will receive an additional letter from us through email that indicates that you've met all requirements and that your credit is no longer considered conditional. And you'll see that reflected once you start getting scores for sections you take. It will no longer say advisory score next to it. It will just show up as a score on your CBA client account.
Okay, so I essentially kind of have to wait till you get the score to see that that's been reflected because I haven't got a letter yet. But I know you guys received them because Parchment shows that you guys got them, my transcripts. So and I haven't gotten a letter, and that was like probably like a month ago. So
Okay, so we do have a 30-day processing time. If you go ahead and send an email to examinfo@cba.ca.gov, we can go ahead and take a look and make sure that we've gotten everything we need for you.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question, and excited that someone's already in the process. So that's good. You can kind of speak to how it's going so far. I like that. All right.
Sorry, David, to ask a clarifying question on the ethics requirement. Say, for example, we can never double count units, right? So if I take an auditing class and I'm counting those as an accounting class, I can't push that down to ethics. The ethics class has to be taken separately, correct?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can't double count. It's got to be unique. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Although, Patty, why don't you speak a little bit to how we could theoretically count it when you apply for your application for exam one way and then maybe licensure? Talk about kind of the flexibility that you and your team have, I suppose.
Yeah, so with the examination versus licensure units, so when we review for examination, we'll just, if you have excess accounting units, we can move those to business. So if you had like 30 accounting units, those excess 6 units could count for business. We just can't count business courses for accounting. And then with ethics, if you have an ethics course, it is going to be a specific courses that will count for that. So yeah, we won't be double counting them for if you have more than 3 ethics units, then we could count it for accounting. Um, So it just kind of depends on how it comes out and plays out. Well, with the requirements right now with exam, we don't look at ethics units, so that would be counted as accounting if it was an accounting ethics course. And then when you got to licensure, it would just transfer as needed, just based on what your classes you're taking are.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that we do what we can to say yes, right? We're not trying to block you. We want you to become a CPA, and Patty and her team and Hillary's team, they all can be like maybe on the exam side, it does get counted for accounting, but then it could be counted for ethics when it gets to the licensing. So again, it's two separate applications. And we are going to talk a little bit more about ethics right now. So let's move on and talk about the rest of the educational requirements, because like I mentioned, under the current rules, you had those requirements that we just talked about in order to be approved to sit for the exam, but there's more in order to attain the CPA license. But like I mentioned, this is where a lot of the changes are coming into, but let's just talk about the requirements as they are today. So this is the legacy pathway, the current requirements. So here are the additional educational requirements you'll need when you apply for your license. So those are an additional 20 semester units of accounting study. So that is on top of the 24 semester units of accounting subjects you already had, right? So 20 semester units of accounting study, 10 semester units of ethics study. Now for these, it's a much broader list of courses that we will accept under this ethics umbrella. You remember when I spoke about the 3 units that is going to be required for the exam after 2027, it was only accounting, ethics, audit, or fraud. This 10 semester units of ethics is a much broader umbrella of courses that we take, because there's a lot of universities that don't really offer multiple ethics courses. So we had to find some other courses to kind of fit in here. And then here's that big one, of course, the 150 total semester units. So under the current rules, in addition to what you had to sit for the exam, you've got 20 more accounting study, 10 ethics, and 150 total semester units, all in all. Students often wonder about that 150 number, what classes will count for that? And the answer basically is all of them, right? That's just the total number of units you need to show on that final transcript. So you got the 24 and the 24 from before. You got this 20 and 10. So that accounts for about half of the 150. You like that accounting joke I just threw in? So beyond those, whatever you need to get up to the 150, every course is going to count. All right, so now let's talk about the exciting news, because how are the new requirements different from what I just spoke about? Okay, so starting January 1 of 2027, the new requirements are you just need a bachelor's degree and then an accounting concentration of courses. That bachelor's degree has no specific number of units tied to it. It's not 150, it's not even 120. Some people say, oh, it's now 120. No, there's no requirement for 120 units. The requirement is simply a bachelor's degree. And again, that can be in any subject, does not have to be accounting. Then what we're calling the accounting concentration of courses is the 24 accounting units, 24 business units, 3 ethics units. That sounds familiar, right? Because that is exactly what the requirements were to sit for the exam. And if you look at your last 2 bullet points, there's no more additional units required. The extra 20, the extra 10, those are gone. There's no more total unit requirement. The 150 is gone. That means that top bullet with the exclamation point, the requirements for your examination and the requirements for licensure, we're talking education, the educational requirements are now identical, okay? So that is a big, big thing to really kind of, like we say, streamline and clarify. Because now, once you've been approved to sit for the CPA exam, you've also met your educational requirements for licensure. You don't have to worry about getting all the way to 150. You don't have to worry about that extra 20. You don't have to worry about that extra 10. So that is pretty exciting. If you're excited, let's see some emojis. Come on, let's see some hands up. Let's see some hands raised. Let's see some fire, all of that. So that's something that we're pretty excited about. And pretty much everywhere we've gone, the students are pretty thrilled about that as well. Let me just throw out a couple more things, and then I'll open it up for some questions here as far as the educational requirements. We are going through that regulatory process right now, and what we're calling the accounting concentration of courses, the 24, 24, and 3, is part of those regulations. So we can't say that they're 100% finalized, but that's going to be what it's going to be. We're 99.99% sure, but I just have to throw out that caveat that the regulatory process is not 100% complete yet. So if there were some, I'll just leave it at that. We'll know for sure by the end of the year, but that is in the regulations and not the actual law. Something else that could come into play for those of you that are transferring to a 4-year university, and this is something that's kind of fun. The CBA is now going to start recognizing degrees. And we're also at community colleges going to start recognizing certain certificates. So here's what that means. If the CBA, let's start. If a university's accounting degree requirements meets all of our educational requirements, the university can apply to have their degree recognized. So that's not the CBA saying, man, that university is so cool, you should go there. No, that's the CBA saying that university's degree does completely meet our educational requirements of the bachelor's degree and the accounting concentration of courses. So that's what that means. So then that university could say, hey, our accounting degree is CBA recognized. So if you come to our university and you earn this degree, then the CBA won't even have to go through your transcript course by course because they recognize our degree and it's met the requirements. So the CBA, so Patty and Hillary is just going to look at your transcript and say, yep, they got that degree. They're good as far as the educational requirements. So that's something that we're putting into place this year, part of our implementation window. And that should kick in, right around 2027. So that is something that's pretty exciting. It's going to kind of streamline work on our end, and it'll give all the students in that university just the knowledge of knowing that they will have met all the requirements. So that's something that's pretty cool. We are working with community colleges as well. Now, this is probably not going to affect those of you currently enrolled because this is going to take a little while to get up and running. But similar to how we're going to recognize university degrees, the goal is to also recognize certain certificates or programs from community colleges or extended studies programs that also completely meet the accounting concentration of courses. So if you do that and the community college comes up with a program with all of these classes, then we will say, hey, you meet that, and then you will also have met the full educational requirements, and we will knock 6 months off of your experience requirement. We're going to get into the experience requirement in just a second. But I'll pause here again if there's any questions about any of this. So now we've kind of covered the full scope of the education requirements. So any question about the way they are? Maybe some of you are still probably going to go in with the current requirements, but I would suspect the majority of you will be going in with the new requirements, but you never know. So ask away if you have any questions about the educational requirements. Jump in. If not, I will assume we have explained it perfectly. All right, I see a question from Tim. You want to?
Hello, I'm still having a question regarding the traditional pathway. So, for example, if I'm eligible to sit for the CPA exam before the deadline is ended, right? But then I didn't fulfill for example, the work experience by 2028. How would that play out? Will I be converted to the new pathway, or I still be able to proceed with the traditional pathway?
That's an excellent question. And Patty can jump in on this too, but however you apply, or actually not however, it should be whenever, because if you apply for the CPA exam in 2026, you'll be applying with the current rules, bachelor's 24-24. If you apply starting January 1st, 2027, it'll be the new rules, bachelor's 24-24 plus 3 ethics. Whenever you apply for the CPA exam, has no bearing on which pathway you can choose when you apply for licensure. Okay, does that make sense? So if you apply for your exam in 2026, you can still choose to apply old or new rules in 27 or 28 during those 2 years when we will accept both. And vice versa. If you apply in 2027 with the exam, you could still choose to apply for your license with the old rules within those 2 years.
Right. So I'll just jump in here also, Tin. If you apply before January 1st, 2029, under the old requirements, you can still stay and continue the process even if you haven't finished your work experience by the beginning of 2029. We're not going to kick you off the old pathway just because you didn't complete all the requirements, as long as you applied before the deadline.
Thank you for the clarification. I got it. Appreciate it.
Hillary, just to ask a follow-up question to that. So if I applied, say, on December 31st, 2028, under like if I'm gonna try going under the 150, and maybe I'm only 6 months into if I'm applying for licensure, what did I need for licensure? Don't I have to submit like that general experience form or like the Attest form showing like documenting like all of my hours when I'm actually applying for licensure?
No,
Or
you can submit it later.
oh, really?
Yeah. As long as you get your application in, then you
Okay.
can submit the other documents when
So
you're
in
ready.
terms of submitting the other documents, will that be, it's not obviously it's not gonna be like a 3-year window, but would it be like say maybe like a couple months after, or when would you like to be seeing like those other requirements for licensure being met?
And we want to see that within a year of
Okay.
reviewing your application, but we can extend it up to 2 years
Oh
under
wow.
the current regulations. I don't believe there's any plan to change that part of
Okay.
it. Yeah.
That's
So
great to
we
know.
do give you quite a bit of time.
Okay. Awesome.
So Fiona, you had a question? Do you still have a question or no?
Oh,
'Cause we're
no,
gonna
you
do-
exactly answered my question. Yeah,
Ah.
because had a question about, you confirmed essentially that I could apply to sit for the exam using the 2026 requirements, but then later for the licensure, I could use the 2027. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, let's move on to experience. Since Betty, you're always doing a great job of segueing into what we're going to talk about next. So let's get into now the third E, which is experience. So this is where, because with the 150 going away, for a lot of students, that was kind of needing a 5th year of school, right? Because a lot of bachelor's degree, you'll end up with about 120, maybe a few more if you're really ambitious to do extra courses. But for a lot of students, there were more, and that's why some of you are, as you just told us, going back to community college maybe to get those extra courses needed. So there was kind of that extra, maybe extra year of school. When that went away, the experience requirement, which you see here, the current rules is 1 year, but that's about to go up to 2 years. So that's kind of the give and the take in the new requirements. But let's jump into the way they are right now. So the current experience requirement is 1 year of general accounting experience under the supervision of an actively licensed CPA. Now that part's really important. So for the entire 12 months, your supervisor has to be actively licensed. They can't let their license go inactive halfway through. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to count. So it's got to be that. The good news is that 12 months does not have to be all in consecutive months. It can be broken up into a couple of different firms or workplaces, as long as it's all done under that supervision of a CPA. We definitely recommend that if you're leaving a place of employment, to get that employer right then to sign your experience form instead of waiting for when you apply for licensure, which could be, who knows, a couple years later, 3 years later. Will that person even still work at that same place? They might be hard to track down. So definitely get those forms signed right away, and you can send them in to us. Even if you're not ready to apply for your license, we will keep them on file, and then we'll match them up with your application when that does come in. You see, I'll skip the second bullet for just a sec, go right to the bottom, because internships and volunteer work all count. right? So it doesn't have to be paid experience is the key there. So that's kind of cool. So if you get a summer internship for 2-3 months, that can count towards your 12 months of experience. So the attest authority. So what exactly does that mean? So completion of the general accounting experience will allow you to perform all the services of a CPA except for signing reports on attest engagements. So the audits, the reviews of financial statements, things like that. If you're licensed with general experience, you can participate in them, but you just can't sign off on them. To get the attest authority to sign off on those engagements requires a minimum of 500 attest hours within that experience requirement. And under the supervision of a licensed CPA who also is authorized to sign reports on the attest engagements. All right, so that's what that is. Let's look now at the new requirements. And like I mentioned, that 1 year has now gone up to 2. So the new rules. So if you're going to go in with just the, the bachelor's degree with the accounting concentration, you don't want to worry about the 150. So you want to go in with the new rules, then it is 2 years of general accounting experience. Everything else stays the same. Has to be under the actively licensed supervisor for the full 24 months. Can still be internship, volunteer, can still be broken up. And then the attest authority, still the same with the 500 hours. Okay, so that's the big difference. There is some added flexibility, like I did mention earlier. I talked about that, the community college thing, when we get that off the ground, up and running. So for those individuals that may be working in a career, already have their bachelor's degree, and now say, you know what? Maybe they're doing some sort of financial work, but now really want to go back and get that CPA. They probably don't have all the accounting units. So if they go back and get that certificate from a community college, we will knock 6 months off of that 2-year requirement. So now it goes down to 1.5 years. One other thing, if you do decide to pursue a master's degree, so this is exciting. So you're going to get that extra year of school there, right? With your master's, we will knock 1 year off of the experience requirement. So you get the master's and suddenly that experience requirement is right back down to 1 year from the 2 years. All right, so that's good. So your 3 E's, education, examination, and now here experience. And then once you've satisfied those 3 E's, you're just about there. But one last thing you'll need to do is submit some fingerprints, and they'll be used to conduct a criminal history background check on you. All right, so before I open it up for questions one last time, just kind of think, what's best for me? Because there really isn't one size fits all. Even at the university level, like for the students who graduated this spring, we can't say, oh, well, you should all go in using this set of rules. Or if you're going to graduate next year, you should all use this set of rules. Because it really is, each of you are on your unique pathway. And there's lots of things to consider for which pathway you will want to choose if you're going to apply for your license in 2027 or 2028. Make sure you figure out what's best for you. Things to consider are like, how close are you going to be to that 150 units when you graduate? Are you just a class or 2 away and it would not be too hard? Or is it going to take another year of school? All of that. As far as the experience, is that a big difference going from the 1 year to 2 years? Do you have some experience already under your belt, maybe with some internships or maybe with some volunteer work? Which would be the faster path for you to get to? All those things to kind of think about. Financially, situation is an additional year of school financially feasible? All those things are going to kind of go into play as you make that decision. All right, I'm just going to show you real quick our website and a little survey I'd like you to take, and then we'll open it up for questions one last time. So all the information we talked about today is on our website, cba.ca.gov. Make a note of that, memorize it, bookmark it. So lots of good stuff there. If you click on the applicants tab right up top, which you see is circled, that's where you're going to find lots of the stuff that we talked about today. If you see outreach, the tab a little over to the right there, lots of good information. I did a podcast with President Latta. You can hear a little more about her career. We recently did a really cool podcast with some university students where they asked specific questions to some of our CBA members about just what is life like on a day-to-day basis in the accounting world. I think you would find that really fascinating. It's about half an hour. You can go on the videos page underneath outreach tab there. So lots of good stuff on our website. Follow us on social media. We're active on all of them: LinkedIn, X, Facebook. We're kind of still newer to Instagram. We could use your help there at CBA News. Please go follow us on Instagram. We always give you lots of good tips, developments as things are developing as far as like this new law. And as we approach January 1st next year, you see some email addresses there. If you're on your way to exams, exam info is the one. If you're ready to apply for your license, licensing info is there. Outreach is the email address that goes to my team. So if you just have a quick question, we can get that answered for you. And I'm going to show you a real quick survey that's real fast, only like 3-4 questions. Can you all please pop your phones out real quick, take a picture of that, because the board always really wants feedback with how we're doing and how you feel. Hopefully you learned some stuff here today. So please, if you wouldn't mind, we'll take you a couple of minutes to take that quick survey and let us know how we did. All right, so we're at 1 o'clock, but I have no problem staying and answering as many questions as we have. So let's fire them off. I guess maybe Leilani, do you want to start? I see your hand up.
Hi, yes, thank you. So I had a question in terms of how you mentioned volunteerism would kind of count towards knocking some time off the 2 years requirement of experience. So I was asking what type of volunteerism would kind of count towards that. I know in college, a lot of students are doing like as a volunteer tax preparer. So would that kind of count as that, or is there different types that meet that requirement?
All right, Hillary, would love to answer this question for you.
Basically any type of accounting work would qualify as long as it's being supervised by an active CPA. Tax preparation, I believe you call it VITA, VITA, would definitely count as long as it's being supervised by a CPA. So you would have them fill out one of our certificates of general experience, make sure it gets signed before you finish, and send it over to the CBA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hillary, just really quickly to ask a clarifying question is that when it comes to actively licensed CPAs, they can be actively licensed in any of the 50 states. It doesn't just have to be in California, correct?
That's correct. Any of the 50 states is fine. If they are licensed outside of the United States, the work does have to be in public accounting. We do not accept private experience supervised by somebody licensed outside the US.
Wow. And then the other kind of like the follow-up question I had to that is that, say if I worked for someone in 2020 that they were actively licensed at that time, but they decided to like let their CPA license lapse. The key is that when I worked with them, they were actively licensed at that time, so the experience will count. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, we're concerned about their status at the time of the employment.
Awesome. And then just one last kind of, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this. I know that the Board of Accountancy takes extremely seriously if a CPA refuses to sign off on someone's work experience. If someone's having difficulty getting a sign off from someone who is in fact, was actively licensed at the time, how do you recommend, aside from obviously sending that person a letter saying, hey, I've asked you to do this? What steps would you recommend for applicants if they're having challenges getting sign off from their employer before getting the CBA involved?
I would definitely keep all correspondence in writing. I would not send an email or a text message if it comes down to having to escalate the issue. Most CPAs, this is very, very rare that we encounter this. Most CPAs want, their employees to get their license. But if it comes down to it, send a letter in writing, do follow-ups by certified mail, and then contact us. And we do what we can to help facilitate a little before it gets to the enforcement point. We really don't want to see that happen. So again, it's very rare, but I do recommend keeping everything in writing and not trying to correspond through email because things tend to fall into spam or they get lost. So
Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Good. All right, should we move on to Celine?
Hi. First off, thank you so much for all the great information. I had a quick question about CPA exam timing. I'm currently a senior, but I still have about a year left before I graduate. So from what I understand, I would not be eligible for the early entry yet since I'm more than 6 months away from graduation. And my original plan was to start studying this summer, but now I'm kind of concerned that if I start too early, I might forget a lot of material by the time I am actually able to take the exam. And on the other hand, if I wait until I'm eligible for the early entry, that I'm worried that I won't have enough time to prepare before. So in a situation like this, when would you recommend starting the CPA exam prep? And how do most students typically structure their study timeline when they still have about a year left before becoming eligible for the exam?
I'll actually have President Latta jump in on this. So you're graduating next spring then in May or June?
Yes.
Okay, so you would be eligible to apply for early entry then probably November, December later this year.
Yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, President Latta, can you speak to maybe that kind of studying time frame? You know, how did you do it, or how I know you have counterparts who have passed the exam too? Any advice?
Yeah, I did not do early entry, so I didn't have that scenario, but I will say in terms of exam prep, most people usually take about 3 to 4 months to prepare for each section. So yeah, I would say probably studying a year in advance probably isn't the most advantageous to you, especially since you're also still studying and learning your college material as well. So I think that would be a little bit challenging. But I think as long as you can dedicate a good 3 months to preparing, and I sat for all sections of the exam while having a full-time job. So I think you could still, once you're eligible for the early entry, what if you're able to sit for the exam during that time, as long as you have about 3 months of dedicated time to prepare. And I think I was studying around, let's see, around like 10 hours a week. You should be prepared. And then I would recommend doing a CPA exam review course as well. Most people who sit for the exam also have an independent review course. The challenge of taking it early entry is you likely might have to pay for that out of pocket, and these review courses are anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000. When you're employed by a firm, or perhaps even if you have an offer by a firm, you may be able to get that covered by your firm. So that is one of the benefits of taking it until you have secured employment, or you're employed by a firm so they can cover that cost for you. So those are just a few tips. I hope that helps.
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, because you could strategically, if you're going to apply in December, you could start studying a little before that, because we will approve you. I think Patty mentioned we have that 30-day window, although right now for exams, we're approving in less than 2 weeks. So you'll get your approval pretty quickly. So you could start studying, late this year, and could be theoretically sitting for your first one at some point early next year. But again, all of that is up to you. Best of luck in your study. We know you can do it. Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, first and foremost, again, really appreciate this presentation for the new requirements. But I guess my question is, it's more for my scenario. So I was able to pass the 4 CPA exams, and I was also able to get the 1 year work experience sign off already. And the only issue right now, which I am currently trying to remediate more or less is just my educational requirements. So I was able to um, graduate from with a bachelor's, but I had just slightly not the amount for the 150 credits. So I'm taking like some of the community college classes to help me satisfy that 150 credit requirement. So I guess my question is, once I am able to pass the um, classes that I'm taking over the summer and get those credits, would basically the process from there just to be submitting everything that I have with my documentation for licensure, for example, like my previous transcript for my bachelor's degree, my the transcript that I have for this summer's community college, and then also my passing the 4 exams and also the 1 year work experience sign off.
That sounds like everything, but Hillary, you want to jump in?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that I got your scenario right. So you've
Yes.
passed all 4 parts of the CPA exam already, correct?
Yeah,
Have
correct.
not applied for a license?
I have not yet.
Okay, so you can get the ball rolling now if you're still in class. You can submit your application for the license and get your work experience in. Once your classes are finished, you can send over the new transcript and we'll finish up the process for you. You don't need to resubmit any transcripts you already sent during
Hmm.
the exam process. Those are already on file. So we
Okay.
just need the new education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess with that being said, my previous employer already sent over like the work experience sign off with the signatures for the active, like working under the active CPA for the year. So that that wouldn't be something I would need to include in my licensure application then, since I'm assuming it's already on file.
No, you don't have to, but if you have a copy
Hmm.
for your own records, you can certainly send it with your application again, just as a safeguard. But if it was already submitted, it should be here on file.
Okay. So I guess with that being said, I guess I could more or less start the licensure process now. But I guess just as a progress thing, once I do finish up my community college classes and get that transcript, I can just submit that when I receive it.
Right, right.
Okay.
You can submit your application now, and then that way we can get the fingerprinting form over to you and you can get that done. And we'll tell you where you're at right now, and then it won't be a surprise to you when we tell you that you're a few units short, and then
Hmm.
you'll just send over that new transcript and you should be good to go.
Okay. And then I guess, sorry, another quick question. When I do get like that, noticing, oh, you're a few um units short, I would just have like that year period to kind of,
Right.
right. Okay. Got it. Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much.
Um,
All right. Congratulations. Sounds like you're just about there. All
Thank
right.
you.
Sunhai, apologies if I meant to pronounce your name. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for the meeting today. And under the requirement, so the education requirement is 24, 24, and 3, so total 51. So I had I had taken enough courses in Irvine Valley College, so that's good for me. Um, but I don't have a bachelor's degree in here, United States, but I graduated college in outside of United States a long time ago. So I have to bring my bachelor's degree outside the United States so that, but I don't need to bring my transcripts from that school because I had enough I took enough classes in Irvine Valley College, so it's just the bachelor's degree. So in that case, should I use the CBA approved foreign credential evaluation services?
Patty, do you want to jump in on that about his bachelor's degree from abroad?
Yes, so on your Irvine Valley College, does it not show that you have a bachelor's degree?
No.
Okay, so then yes, you would want to do a foreign evaluation, and it sounds like you've already seen our list of our approved evaluators, and you'll go ahead and just sign up through them, and they'll give you all the information that you need to send to them, and then they can send that copy of the evaluation to us, and then we can use that to get your degree, and then we'll use it combined with your Irvine Valley College courses as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question is that it's about master's degree. So, master's degree would help me to decrease the work experience from 2 years to 1 year. Should that master's degree be related to accounting only, or any master's degree?
We're still working on the regulations right now. There will be different master's degrees that we will accept. However, if it's not a master's degree in accounting, your undergraduate degree will need to be accounting. One of them, either the bachelor's or master's, has to be accounting to reduce the work experience requirement.
Okay, thank you.
So I was just going to mention on the Google sheet that I made for you, there's a tab. And by the way, anybody who's watching this, if you would like me to help you map out your unit so you can kind of see where you are, there's a tab on there called Students with Degrees Outside of the United States. If you click on that link, it'll link you to the CBA where you can see all the approved translation agencies, and they will absolutely go through and approve, they will accept the units. The Board of Accountancy is extremely generous in terms of how they go through, and obviously they're generous, but they follow the rules, but they will absolutely work with you. And so if you did take business units over at a university or even accounting units overseas, they will absolutely accept those units, but it has to be evaluated by one of their approved translation agencies. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope we answered all of your questions. Hope you learned a lot. And just remember, we are here to help you attain that goal and make it to the finish line of becoming a CPA. So we're excited that you're on the journey, and we hope this helped get you there. And like I said, we're always a phone call or an email away. If you have any questions, our staff is always more than happy to help. So have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. Campus tour, Irvine Valley College edition, all done.
Awesome.
Happy Friday. All right. Thanks, everyone.